Okay. Okay, we're on.
Okay. Good evening. The Design Review Board 2 public meeting of January 29th, 2009 is called to order. Please refrain from talking among yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You'll be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by calling our DRB hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within either 7 or 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date, depending on the application. The case planner will announce the length of the appeal period with each case. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call. Mr. Carter?
Here.
Ms. Friedman?
Here.
Mr. Garagos?
Here.
Mr. Malikian?
Here.
Mr. Zarifian?
Here.
Zarifian, I'm sorry. Report regarding posting the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on January 22nd, 2009. Next thing on our agenda is election of a chairperson for this year.
I would like to nominate Mr. Alan Malekian to be chair.
I will second that.
A motion was made to elect Alan Malikian as chair for this year. Roll call. Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Mr. Garagos?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
Mr. Zarifian?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
The next item is oral communications.
We don't have any cards on it.
No cards, okay. Anybody in the audience?
Actually, we do have one oral communication.
Okay.
I'm the oral communication because I won't be here at the end of the meeting, so I'm going to move staff comment up to now. As many of you know, I'm going to be stepping down next month from this board because I'm running for city council. And although nothing requires me to give up my seat, the public must perceive this board as being fair and neutral. The decisions that are made here are too important to risk anyone wondering whether our decisions are politically motivated. I'd like to thank the public for their engagement and participation in this process. I want to thank staff for all of their hard work. And I'd like to thank my fellow board members for being patient with me and educating me and for their public service. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if staff would allow us to comment, I'd like to thank Laura for all her time on this Design Review Board. And I first became acquainted with Laura when I was standing at that microphone appealing to her better judgments, and I would like to thank her for concise opinions, helpful opinions, and a thorough listening to both sides of all the applicant and interested parties. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next.
I think Tim.
Excuse me, just on behalf of staff, I guess I'd also like to thank Laura specifically for her advocacy of mid-century modern and promotion of, the richness of that style that Glendale has. And also personally, I just admire her willingness to charge unfazed into controversial territory, and just to be fearless about presenting her opinion in a measured way.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGoby.
All right, I guess we're on to the review calendar. Staff does not have any other announcements. There's nothing on the consent calendar, so we're on to the regular
One of the, I do have a slight change on the order. I would like to move the second item to last because Ms. Friedman needs to recuse herself, and we want her comments on the first and the last one. So I'm going to reorder that move the second item, which is the 292 Cumberland Road, to the last item, and move up 3772 San Augustine up to the second one on the agenda. I would like a motion on that.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, who
I made
made the motion? Mr. Garagos?
And I seconded it?
Mr. Carter?
Mr. Carter.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Mr. Zarifian?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes. Also, because of Ms. Freeman leaving, I would like to move the approval of the minutes and get that out of the way. If everybody had a chance to review that.
I did. I took a quick look at it. I'll make the motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, roll call. Ms. Friedman?
Yes.
Mr. Garagos?
Yes.
Mr. Carter?
I will abstain.
Okay, Mr. Zarifian?
Abstain.
And Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
There's three.
Okay. So, as the cases, the first one, 2660 Montrose. Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. The next case before you is 2 PDR 2008-074A, located at 2660 Montrose Avenue. The zoning on this property is R3050 moderate density residential zone. This project is exempt from CEQA, and this is the first time submittal for the board's review. The project description is to construct a 465 square foot first and second floor addition, an attached 500 square foot two-car garage, and to alter the siding of the front and sides of the existing residential structure to match the style and material of the proposed addition. The existing property is developed with a single-story, 770 square foot single-family residence without a garage. The property is 3,482 square feet in size and gently slopes downwards to the front facing Montrose Avenue towards the rear and is irregular in shape. Onto the site planning, the proposed addition and attached garage is located at the rear of the property and is set back 5 feet from Raymond Avenue and 2 feet 11 inches from the interior east property line. Although the zoning code requires a more restrictive average and minimum setback from the street side and the interior property line than is proposed, however, an approved variance has been approved for these proposed setback. The project's configuration is compliant with the zoning code regulations for the R3050 zone. On to mass and scale. The mass and scale of the project appears to be related well with the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed addition and attached garage are located at the rear and of the property and will have minimum impact on the building mass. The project proposes to continue the minimal traditional style of the existing house and update the colors without diminishing the character of the home. As noted in my staff report, the quality of the materials could be improved. The project proposes to utilize vinyl sidings and aluminum windows with interior two-dimensional muttons to match and retain the existing unpermitted windows. Details for the proposed aluminum windows have not been included with this project. On staff recommendation, based on the above analysis, staff recommends approval on the proposed project with conditions. Condition number 1, staff recommends aluminum windows to be treated with three-dimensional exterior muttons with wood trims and sills to be utilized throughout the addition, as well as the existing windows to be legalized. The second condition, a window schedule and cut sheet shall be provided prior issuance of a building permit. And the third and last one, the applicant should investigate alternative materials, siding material with greater quality, such as cementous fiberboard or hardy plank. This concludes presentation. The applicant and the homeowner are in the audience, and I'll be available for questions.
Have any questions from the planner? Okay. Edward Hakopian?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. For the records, my name is Edward Hagopian. I'm the architect of this project, and my address is 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. This is, as you can see, is a small project that this existing house does not have any garage and the owners, they have to park outside. And the lot is so small that, as you can see, we were obligated to file a variance to be able to put just a garage there. So if it's close to the property line, it's because of setback from the street side and the other side. And but at least if you look at the design of the project, it's tried to have a break on that neighbor's side. May I come close?
Yes, please.
There's not much for me to say about this project because I believe it's continuation of the existing colors, materials. We'll have some sidings, and the sample of the siding is there. The colors of the rendering is a little bit more bluish. It's not that bluish. It's more grayish colors. And the windows will be quality windows. The retaining walls will be decorative concrete block. Colors, as I said, will match. The dormers on the sides of the shutters on the sides of the windows will be the same as others. That's all I can say. The driveway will be a decorative concrete with bricks, and most probably we have to do some public work because of the street and sidewalk, things like that. So existing condition is not in a good shape. It will upgrade and be improved after that project is done.
Mr. Coleman, I have a question. Have you looked into the zoning, meaning for the fire zone, the location of the building? What would be the fire zone for the...
Anyway, because we are adding more than 50%, we have to have a sprinkler system in this house.
The question that I'm asking is because of the siding that you're using does not have any fire value. So I'm just wondering, would it be better for you to use the hardy board rather than this aluminum? Because you're still going to have to provide the fire rating on the exterior wall, and
I'm
this
not
is
sure
not
if
going
you are
to...
in that fire zone. I will check that just in case if that's the
Because
case.
you're within less than 3 feet on one side. If the new code
I
does
will
not...
check that just in case.
allow-
If that's the case, we'll use the hardy side.
Okay, I think that would look much better also rather than the...
Okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The siding, it looks to me to be two different colors. There's a gray on the top and blue
Yes.
on the bottom.
It's your choice, whichever you like.
Okay, so those are
I
two
like the one
different
on the
color
top,
choices?
but-
I see, okay. All right, thank you.
I have a question. Also, is there a sample board or a window cut sheet that...
Not the window, because window, we have existing windows and we'll match the same thing. It's a white aluminum, and one of the conditions is to have grids, right? To have
Well,
exterior-
three-dimensional grids, I don't believe the existing windows have permits for it.
We would like to continue the same windows that we have in the front. It's existing, same thing. We don't want to change those. Those are new windows in the front. Am I right? And we could keep the same style of the windows that we have. Then we will say those windows that it's towards the street. We have those existing windows.
Dennis, can you clarify that then? Is it the front windows you're having that aren't compliant? I didn't catch that.
The existing front windows are aluminum with two-dimensional grids. They're interior between the glazes.
Not an applied, there's not an exterior applied?
There's
Notice that.
No, there isn't. Well, the details of the windows were requested, however, it was difficult. Well, they were not supplied.
No, I'm just saying if he wants to continue what's on the front, we would want to have the applied grids, and I just wondering if the front one had applied grids. I didn't notice that when I was out there.
Do we have the photo packet?
It's supplied on the board. I'm sorry.
Same as what we got.
I can understand if this is a new house to change the whole
No, they're not on the
windows.
outside.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of that one.
I would prefer to have the windows to be consistent throughout. It's not a huge development, so if what they're proposing to match the one that it's there and it's going to remain, so I'd rather.
So just to clarify, the windows on the front are the ones that aren't permitted, or they are?
There are no building permits on record. The proposal is to continue the same windows within the addition.
Right. Okay, thank you. The public session is closed. Mr. Carter?
First, I'd like to compliment the applicant for trying to do an improvement on a very, I won't say tortured lot, but it's a lot with some challenges. But having said that, a house on any lot like this, whether it's your property or not, that is the lot. I mean, there's no trees to hide behind. So if you'll excuse us as we take a few minutes to make sure that this is sort of a harmonious, well-designed project that will blend with the neighborhood. So that's will be the focus of my conversation.
I think, maybe I should get close. I think it's a well-planned plan. I like the way things have been laid out. One of the comments I think that I saw, and I sort of agree with the staff, is that the new addition somehow doesn't really blend with the existing house. It doesn't make the final kind of building look like it's a sort of a singular piece and a sort of a better house because of that. I think somehow it can let the existing house play a better role in that, and I can give an example, and my colleagues can comment also. I need to show you the. I think this elevation probably can explain it best. As you can see, the existing house kind of sits there, and the new addition kind of looks like it's a different house put together with this existing one. They kind of do their own things volumetrically. So it's one way, for example, if you think of this roof kind of continuing and having a gable that comes down here, and then this volume connects to it, that kind of creates a large enough critical mass that the existing house is a very integral part of it. Then I think the overall kind of outcome looks like as if it was designed as a new house. So I think this line is basically saying I'm existing, I'm new. We kind of wanted to get together, but this is what we have. But I think it should be better in terms of coming together. So then this elevation will do the same thing, and then I think the two will have a better sort of connection, so to speak. The other thing that I noticed as I was I need to show it here also. I noticed when I was at the site that the sidewalk, the way it stopped, it seemed as if like the building lost its ground. It has so much presence once you follow it and kind of come around the site, and all of a sudden the back side looks like the ground is not there. It turns into something else. So I would like to ask the staff. I don't know.
The street, I think they did mention something about the street.
Is that the improvement that you were talking about? I think that would be a good improvement, because then really it will unify the corner, because corner buildings are sort of more important. I mean, somehow they have more responsibility to make that corner turn in a nice way. So I think the sidewalk becomes a very important thing for the building to have to come down to the right ground. I think those are the two major comments that and still kind of need to go back and look at some more things, but I would say those two were the biggest pieces that I saw.
I agree with what's been said. If there's a way to finesse the joining of the new with the old, I think it would help make it look more like a cohesive single house. There's no problem with adding the size. Clearly, you're surrounded by multifamily and buildings of different sizes, so I don't think that's the issue. I think we're talking about just some finessing, maybe some rethinking, and I think it would benefit the project. And as you go forward, it'll, make it that much of a nicer house and increase the property value that much more. I think it's probably worth the effort of doing. In the same way that I think that upgrading the siding material is very important. I think with this siding material that you've proposed would be a downgrade in a way. And if you just use the hardy board or something that's more substantial, I think it would pay off for itself. I would like to see the windows be upgraded, but I'll leave that up to the rest of the board. I think that it would help. As you all know, I'm no fan of the vinyl windows with the fake interior divided lights. The color is up to you. I agree with Mr. Hagobian that the top color is a nicer color. It's cool. It's a little warmer, less industrial looking somehow, and fits the house better. So I would agree with the first three of the staff conditions, but I would make number 3 a condition rather than a recommendation. But I would also be willing to return it for redesign to see if they can finesse the two masses together better.
Was number 3?
Or the other alternative would be to pass it with staff, giving staff that direction, which I'm comfortable doing, but I would leave that up to the board.
We need to finish, and then if you have a couple minutes.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. Mrs. Arifian pointed out perfectly. That's what's necessary at that joint to really connect it. And I think that gable piece, that cross gable, would really do a number on it. I like the fact that you brought in the sign. I think that really helps, especially for the neighbor. I think that works well. But that's what struck me initially when I saw the package, that there is that disconnect there. It doesn't need to be. In reality, it's a similar amount of framing to make that happen, and I think it would make it really successful. I do think the siding needs to be upgraded. I don't know what the board has traditionally done on vinyl siding, but I think that's something we hadn't wanted to encourage, or aluminum siding. The windows, I could be flexible. I think there's not, to be honest, I don't know if there's enough there that you're keeping them to match. And plus they weren't permitted, so it's tough to sort of set a precedent on that. I also think a newer one would have more dimension than that one has. That one's a sort of an older style where it was very much planar, where the glass was sort of planar. You didn't have the kind of dimension that you would have on a vinyl or aluminum window. So, again, we'd open that for discussion. I think I would be comfortable, because of the scope of the project and the simplicity, I think, of what the corrections are, I would be comfortable having staff, if staff was amenable, to giving them those comments and moving forward. But whatever you guys think.
Okay. Well, before I begin, I'll give you a minute if you want to speak before I give my comments. I need to open it up.
The floor here is higher. This is stairs. This is the landing of the stairs. Right. So that this gable cannot go there. It has nothing to do with this. This is like about 4 feet higher than this level here. So this is different level from here, and that connection, logic is not functional.
They don't have anything to do with each other. It's an angle coming up and then resolving itself.
It's about the roof, how the roof come together, rather than the level.
It's a massive
If you look in the roof plan, you can see that what you are asking is, I don't know how can that be done.
You could if that house was built, you could California frame, adding on the building we're talking about, and it wouldn't affect your use at all. It wouldn't affect use at all.
How to add, that's the question. To go up?
Yeah, you just extend that up and then it frames down onto the other.
Well, I think we're not going to.
Yeah, but the plan, this is longer, this is shorter, and
Right.
And that's a positive. We don't want them to be on the same plane. It's nice that they're not on the same plane. That's the nice thing about it, that it's back. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
If I may, because we have attempted to work with the applicant on this point, what we can do is we can do our best to come to some agreement, and then if that seems like it doesn't, we can't come to agreement, we can bring it back to the board.
Okay. Well, that's fine. I think the project is designed extremely well. I mean, it's just a very modest addition, so I have no problem with what it was proposed. I do agree with my colleagues about the connection between the existing and the new. I think that section needs to be worked on. I'm not sure if the answer is what Mrs. Zarifian was mentioning, but I believe it is possible, based on building a California frame over the existing and then just bringing it over to the stair addition. The other, I mean, I think it is possible. I'm not sure. I don't have all the information there. I don't have any framing or any other situation or all these conditions in front of me, but I would recommend the applicant to meet with the staff and talk about these items, and I think it would definitely make this a lot better project. That definite line, I mean, the perspective, it really speaks on its own that what we're talking about, that the two separate structures that are coming together. So if there is a way to fix that, and I think Mr. Zarifian has a sketch that I think what we can do is we can give that to the staff and let the staff review that and present that to Mr. Akopian and see if that is even possible. If not, then if there's any other way that you guys can come to agreement, well, it should be okay. Yes.
And
My one concern about, I understand the impetus to try to find a solution, because I agree, when I looked at the elevations, that struck me as well. But what I wouldn't want to do is to add so much mass by putting this larger roof on that all of a sudden what's a very modest house with a little addition becomes this huge thing with a giant roof. So if you can find the balance, and if it doesn't look out of proportion, I think that would be great. But if not, I would prefer to have something that does look more like an addition but keeps that small scale kind of feeling to it. I think that would be for me, that would be the first priority, is to keep that small scale feel to it. So I would make that part of the.
Yeah, that's a good point, but I think the existing house is so small that, especially that only part of the roof continues up and gables back down again, it will just be the right scale, as I was kind of trying to imagine it on the side. But, once it's drawn up, then we can see how small or large it is.
yeah, if I may, I mean, staff has worked with Mr. Hagopian, and we believe that this can be accomplished at the staff level. We would like to just confirm that the primary concern is where it's viewed from the street, and that if a similar transition or integration in the roof on the opposite side of the house is not done, then that would also be acceptable to the board. But
You mean the two streets, right? Or just Montrose?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
No, she's saying if we do it on the street side, which is the side.
rather than the interior property line.
You don't have to do the same connection on it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So as long as it doesn't look out of proportion, maybe they can do a study, or you can do a study with them. And as long as the proportion is right, if they can make it work.
I think that provides enough direction to staff that we can do our best to work with the applicant on this and approve it on the staff level if it meets with all the conditions.
Okay.
I think there's definitely a solution there. I think
Maybe Mr. Zarakibians can give you...
Volunteering his
sketches.
sketch.
So I would
No,
like
what?
to make a motion to approve with conditions. The first condition being that the staff work with the applicant, do some studies to see if the new addition can be better connected with the existing house. They can use Mr. Zarifian's sketch just to look at. That would be the first condition. The second condition would be to upgrade the siding to hardy board or other material as approved by staff. What do we want to do about the windows? What kind of consensus? I mean, my preference would be to upgrade the windows, all of the windows.
I think the owner will be happier at the end once the whole house is redone, and it will be a beautiful house, and you'll be happy that you changed the windows, I believe.
Okay. So that would be a condition as well, that all the windows be upgraded with, if they're going to use divided lights, with exterior divided lights or no divided lights. And keep your wording as to the recommendations for the framing, but to take out the consider and make it a recommendation. And I would keep your other suggestion as well about the window schedule. So we're keeping 1, 2, and 3 and just making them conditions and adding the one about finessing the other thing. Okay?
Have a motion?
I would second that motion.
I'm sorry, the second was from Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
I made a motion.
Oh, you made a
That was a long motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Friedman and a second by Board Member Carter to approve with staff recommendations, making conditions 1, 2, and 3 all conditions as opposed to considerations or recommendations, and to add a condition of working with the applicant, trying to discover a way to enhance the transition between the existing portions of the building with the addition.
And, before we vote on this, I'd just like to acknowledge the applicant that they have encouraged an upgrade of the windows, and we understand that that is an expense, and we hope you understand that it's for the betterment of the community, and we hope for your property.
Okay, this will be roll call. Board Member Carter?
Yes.
Board Member Friedman?
Yes?
Board Member Garagos?
Yes.
Board Member Zarifian?
Yes.
Chairperson Malikian?
Yes.
Okay, I have a 5-0 vote for yes.
So we're going to go to 3772 St. Augustine.
This is St. Augustine.
Dennis?
Could you pass the pictures around because I couldn't see it?
Yeah.
Okay, by way of preliminary, the first pack is the site itself. This larger packet is the neighborhood. And then this photograph is taken by the applicant from across the canyon, across Chevy Chase Canyon, and essentially shows the site from what they believe, and I essentially concur, is sort of the most visible, well, the closest visible location for the site. I've highlighted in magic marker here what I believe is the actual site of the house as visible from across the canyon. It's pretty small, but because of how far away it is. The project is a first-time submittal for final review. It's a proposed addition of about 2,400 square feet to the house, bringing it up to about 4,435 square feet. The lot's 25,420 square feet. It's a long flag lot out to San Augustine. There's a small portion that also fronts Figueroa Street. The house sits on a pad down here on the westerly portion of the lot. The additions are a master bedroom here on the south side of the house, here I should say. Some more rooms next to that to the north. There's an addition on the north side of the house here that expands it to the north. The existing garage is being converted to living space, and a new garage being added to the east side of the house, new 3-car garage as required. There's a basement being added underneath the main living area here. The pool that's on the west side of the house is being removed to make room for the patio in the new basement area, and then there'll be a new pool south of the house here in this location. There's also going to be a large sort of motor court added or expanded to provide access into the new garage, and 3 proposed guest parking spaces off of this motor court area, and then up the flag to San Augustine. That's the general characteristics of what's being proposed. Staff believes that the project is consistent with all the elements of the general plan. The project's located in the R1R zone, and it's in the Chevy Chase Estates neighborhood. Most of the homes in the neighborhood were built in the 60s and the 70s and are of contemporary architecture with a variety of styles. The proposed project is generally comparable with other development in the neighborhood in terms of size, FAR, lot coverage, as shown in the table in the staff report. The portion of the site devoted to parking and circulation is very interior to the site and not visible from either street. And given the nature of the landscaping and the grades, it's not terribly visible really from neighboring properties, although it may be somewhat visible from up here. From the backyards, I didn't get access to those to really be able to determine that. There is a substantial amount of new paving here compared to the existing condition. So staff is proposing as the only condition of approval that this new paving up to approximately this point here be made of some sort of permeable material like grasscrete, but not exclusively grasscrete. In general, staff believes that the proposed lot coverage, landscaping, parking arrangement, and the walls are consistent with the design guidelines and development in the neighborhood in general. The creation of the basement under the house increases the overall height of the house per code to 25 feet 3 inches, but it doesn't actually raise the roof line of the house because all the addition is under the existing footprint of floor level of the house. It's all being excavated to make this basement possible. Because of the large grade separation from Figueroa to the site of the house, and given the location of this basement area, staff does not believe that it's going to create a looming presence above Figueroa. As Ms. Friedman mentioned, you can drive along Figueroa and it's very hard to see the house. Now the house is coming out some 18 feet closer to the street, but even given that, staff does not believe, I do not believe that it'll be visible, perhaps even at all, from Figueroa Street. The perspective renderings give some impression of what the house would look like if you were able to hover in the air above Figueroa.
I have a question. Can I ask it now?
Sure.
Or should I wait? Okay. So they're excavating under, but how close is from the bottom of the house on the hillside?
On the hillside?
Yeah. How close is that to the actual slope? In other words,
you mean the point of excavation?
Yeah. So that
it probably comes right out, if I'm reading this right, it would probably come out right to the edge of the slope. The applicant's architect can best respond to that.
The way it looks as though it's pretty far. It looks like it, from where the hill's coming up. I'm thinking about sightline from below. So if you're looking up, if you're standing down on Figueroa, let's say, and you're looking up, you wouldn't see it, right? Because it doesn't come right to the edge of the setback.
Yes.
Okay, that's what
I think they are excavating out to the edge of the slope, in effect, to create their patio area.
But they're not going to be, okay.
But the house is not coming out to that edge, that newly created edge, essentially.
So my other question is, are there retaining walls that we're not seeing that are below it or on the sides?
There are some retaining walls here, sort of southwest of the house. Most of these are existing. This is a new retaining wall system here, essentially up at the top of the slope. But the applicant has asserted, I haven't been out there to visit this location, but they're showing some existing retaining walls, and they've asserted that there are these existing retaining walls here.
Now, is that our landscape plan?
We do not have a landscape plan for this. This is the closest thing to it, where they're showing this revised area here, and they've got some landscaping here around the guest parking and around this area here. If you compare with the aerial photograph, you can see there's mature shrubs and trees in most of these areas now. Some of that may disappear as part of this work, but there's no new landscaping per se being proposed except for in this area around here and here.
So for R1R, we typically, for new development, require, now this isn't new, this would be, is this going to be considered new development, or is this a remodel,
well,
given how much they're adding?
we did not require new landscaping, because my understanding is we typically only require that for a new project in its entirety, essentially. Since this is an addition or an extensive remodel, we did not require a landscape plan.
Right, but by the time they're done, they might be taking out, like you said, most of the landscaping, because they're going to have to disturb the hill. And
they may take out, they may take out,
okay.
For example, there's a few trees or shrubs here that they may lose. Yes?
Okay, that was my question.
It probably would be good to add as a condition, perhaps, some additional landscaping in this area, provide some more screening.
Okay, thank you.
We've already touched on the fact of the location of the basement in relation to the slope and the unlikelihood that it will be essentially invisible. The staff generally believes that the proposed building height, setbacks, FAR, roof pitch, and overall design are consistent with the design guidelines and neighborhood development. We don't believe that the basement or that the additions proposed will create substantial new mass visible from any streets. I mentioned that the architecture of the house has been identified as Spanish colonial revival, although it could be described as minimalist, traditional, or contemporary. But in general, we find that the design is coherent and attractive. We only have the one condition of approval for the grasscrete, and possibly the second condition to add some landscaping around the southerly sides of the property to provide additional screening there. We've got a material reference board here, and we've got some colored elevations that give you an example. They're basically going to be continuing the colors and styles of the existing house.
So they're going to be using the same windows for the new addition that they have now?
That's my understanding, but the architect will clarify that.
Okay.
And we're sure that those retaining walls they're showing for the pool, that's properly rendered? That it is they would be under 5 feet? Right? For the pool, for the new pool area?
Yes, in this area.
Yeah. Those don't need, those are consistent?
Well, they haven't given us heights, so I can't speak to that. I can't speak to that.
Oh, I have a question for staff.
Okay.
Under environmental constraints, where's Tim? The last environmental constraint. Since the house was built in 1969, neither the structure nor the site itself appears to be associated with any historic event or people. I just don't think that I don't think that the first part of that sentence really relates to the second part of the sentence.
You're correct that buildings under 50 years old can be considered historic. Generally, 50 years is the cutoff, but an exceptional piece of architecture, such as this building, can be judged to be have historic merit, even though it's not 50 years old.
Not that this building does. I just want to be sure that that doesn't become part of the lexicon or policy of the city. To just say that because it's from 1965, that it couldn't be significant. Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Luke Mahan?
Hi, my name is Luke Mahan with ISG Design Group. We did the design for the addition and remodel on this property. I guess I had to give you our address, 21133 Victory Boulevard, Canoga Park, zip code 91303. Just to address a couple of the comments that, and the questions that came up when the staff was making their presentation. First things first is that the area of excavation on this, the existing swimming pool, is the reason that we originally started talking about doing any addition whatsoever on this property, in addition to the fact that the homeowner wanted wanted an addition. He originally was proposing something much smaller than what we are doing now. When we consulted with him originally, we had noticed some cracking in the existing swimming pool and recommended that he consult with the soils engineer. The soils engineer did come out and make a recommendation that there was no imminent failure of the slope or anything along those lines, but that there was some differential settlement occurring in the swimming pool that was causing the cracking and eventually would worsen over the course of time. As a result, the costs to fix all of those problems would far exceed the actual costs that it would be worth to do the small addition that Dr. Mirzayan was originally trying to do. As such, we did expand the scope of work slightly. We created the area of the basement as a sort of mitigating factor because of the recommendations of the soils report that allows the addition to go down into the solid bedrock. And eliminate a lot of issues with potential future issues with that slope. The retaining walls that you see on the plan, actually, if you see the elevation, the colored elevation at the top right there with the roof on it, the retaining wall nearest the stairs that go up from the basement level to the upper level is the only area where the retaining wall itself approaches 5 feet. We worked quite a bit with staff to make sure that
Can you step forward?
Certainly. The area of the retaining wall at this point is the only place where it reaches 5 feet. As it moves back along and around, it's a little difficult here in a two-dimensional drawing, but as it moves back along and around the building, coming back around here, it reduces. In this particular rendering, I would say that the retaining wall almost is probably not extremely accurate. When you get to the rear of the swimming pool here, it is actually almost diminishing to nothing, and that stuff.
Well, if you can just hold off on your thoughts and let's talk about that. Right now, what you're showing is you're putting this new retaining wall here. And there's an existing retaining wall down at this point. Obviously, this one's coming out. This one, based on what your wall height is showing, is 133. Your deck height is going to be 140 or 141. So from there, you're going to have almost a 7-foot difference from there to there, and you have about a foot away from this retaining wall. So how are you proposing to have...
These retaining walls that you see that are existing on this survey are actually more like landscape walls, and I believe, if I'm correct, that they're actually done in railroad ties and that stuff. I actually have, because of the steepness of this slope, I've actually not walked down there a ton and that stuff.
But my question is that if, let's say, if this wall height, whatever this is, railroad ties, whatever it is, if it's 133 and your finish slab, which I'm assuming you're maintaining, which is 140, you have about a 7-foot difference, and this thing is coming out almost to that point.
That line there, 144, it's a little difficult to see on here.
Well, I'm going with what this wall height is.
I understand. I certainly understand what you're saying.
So you have almost a 7-foot wall here, and it may get better or worse as it gets around to this side. So I would recommend this retaining wall to be looked at, because I don't think, and you're getting really close within the setback.
That's a fair point, and as staff had asked us at one point to fade out our contour lines on here because it was so busy. But what we will do is we will be happy to verify and amend as necessary, so there's no portion of the retaining wall.
You're also going to have a distance, very crucial distance to the property line, that your retaining wall is going to be questionable here, because you're coming out from where it is now, and this thing is coming out to there, so this retaining wall here is going to be a lot taller. And I'm not sure. I don't have those information. So,
okay.
Okay. Why don't you continue finishing up?
Okay, that's no problem. More than anything, I was going to make myself available to answer any questions or anything that you did have. So
my last question: have you had the building and safety look at this, because you're lowering this and you have a retaining wall, and you have a building right up to the retaining wall?
The retaining wall itself is actually part of the building. And we've actually done it very commonly on other projects as a basement for the retaining wall. It's actually very common in garages.
I would check with the building and safety, being that this is going to be a new addition and there's going to be a retaining wall. They may want to have certain setback from there, so I would recommend.
We will certainly make sure, obviously, before anything is said and done, we know that we need to permit it with the building department.
What is the deck height here?
The deck height is, the deck height at the edge here is at the edge of the slope, and it matches, I believe, we are actually 10 feet below the finished floor of the existing house. So we would be, was that?
It would be 130.
Yeah, I believe it's 130.
Here. 130 is there, so you're this much back, so you're about, I would say about 4 foot.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'd say it's more like about 135 or so, and I don't have those right here. Actually, you know what? If we look at our sections,
well, your section is a little bit different than what you're showing on your site.
Section is showing there are finished 134, just slightly higher than 134.
I just wanted to clarify on these. And you are proposing the permeable?
Yeah, you know what, we had not proposed it, but we absolutely support staff's recommendation on that and have no issues with that as a
Being on a
condition.
hillside, does staff still recommend, being that all that water is going to be soaking into the, I mean, wouldn't that be something that Public Works need to address, being that all that permeable surface that it's going to, I mean, the whole construction has started because of the crack in the pool and...
We'd be happy to consult with Public Works and see if they have any concerns about it.
I have a recommendation on that, which would be, I think that given that they're going to be disturbing a lot of ground and they may have retaining walls, that we should make as a condition that they hire a licensed landscape architect and let them look at the grass-crete issue, because that's who should know about the appropriateness of it. It's my understanding that it would actually help and not hurt the hill, but...
Let's before we start talking, do we have any more questions for the applicant?
I do have a couple of quick comments in relation to that. One of the things that we absolutely know that we're going to have to do here is we had not specifically intended to hire a landscape architect, but we know that we are going to be hiring a civil engineer on this. As part of the design of and location of the retaining walls and all of that. When we do that, we would be happy to provide a hydrology study, which would talk about the drainage and that stuff, and make a recommendation about the use of permeable pavers, and present that to planning prior to our final formal approval. Also, to a comment that somebody had made during staff's presentation, we are intending to change all of the doors and windows out on the house. We have given I believe it's JT Doors and Windows brochure as an example of that. They are intended to be all wood windows, stained grade wood windows, and with no divided light. And I know that's a concern of the city. So.
Okay, and the landscape architect...
Let's talk about that, and then we can, so we don't need to... Okay, all right.
That was basically it.
Okay, thank you.
I want to know what's happening to the umbrella. What's happening to the umbrella? It's really great. I love it. Fabulous.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so now you go ahead.
Okay, I think it's a nice addition. I'm glad that it's pushed back enough away from the slope. I don't think it's going to be visible. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact. The landscape architect recommendation is because you will be disturbing ground on the back and on the sides. And one of the things now is that it's so heavily screened, which is why it's not seen. And I just think it might be a good thing for you in terms of giving you recommendations for because you're going to be losing a lot of the landscaping that you have now. And the reason I suggest license as opposed to just a landscape designer is because you do have these issues with drainage. You have the railroad ties on the back, which may or may not be structurally correct in the way that they were engineered. And a licensed landscape architect can deal with that and would have the experience in dealing with the slope and the permeable material and all of that, and can really advise you. And also because it's very difficult sometimes to pick the right palette for these hills that will grow, because there's so much decomposed granite that you need to be sure that you do pick specimens that can thrive in that kind of condition. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of money on plants and have them die off. So someone with a license would be able to really be sure that you're planting something that's appropriate. Okay.
Mr. Harris?
I think it's nicely done. I just have the issues on the retaining walls. I think that one for the basement cut is, as the retaining wall comes out of the building in the basement, and it's a street side, doesn't that have to be 5 foot on that? So I'm wondering if they're able to do that cut like that. That's why.
Well, the retaining walls
Even
on
though
this,
part of the
on the
building-
site have to be a maximum of 5 feet tall because basically they're exposed to the streets on
Right,
all
but
the
the
sites.
one that's making the cut for the basement as it shoots along the property line, once it comes out of the building.
Is this on the north side of the building you're talking?
Side, yeah.
Okay.
That's is that considered a street view, which means it would need to be 5 feet?
Once it's exposed to the air, essentially, you know, when it's in the patio area.
They're showing it the full height, so it's going to be 10 feet there, 8 or 9 feet. So, and it would obviously have an impact with if they had to lower that, it means it won't have as big of an opening, which means that space would change. So that's the only reason I'm noting it now.
I think
You can see it on the 3D.
I think I know what you're talking about. I think I understand what you're saying. Yes, they theoretically, I think they do potentially have a problem with that.
Only because it would have an impact with the envelope. I mean, how the basement would happen would have to change. So.
Right? Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And that's because it's a street facing, right? I mean, otherwise, if there wasn't a street there, it wouldn't be an issue. It would be behind the house.
Right.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion that you make it a condition that staff verify that, and if it does change,
Yeah, I think that's
that it
fine.
come back to us, that it come back to us? You
I
can
just
make
want to
that
note
part of-
it. Those are the issues.
So your concern is the retaining walls that are going to be around.
Retaining walls the retaining wall they're making on the north side, so you can have the basement. See the 3D there?
Okay.
It's full height as it's coming out of the house, and it would have to be 5 feet as it's coming out of the house. And actually, if it's it's not in the setback, so it would be 5 feet. See, it's full height as it's coming out of the basement.
Oh, this one you're talking about.
Right, that piece right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So this one, what you're saying is once it comes out, even though that it's retaining.
That has been my experience on Hillside. I'm in the middle of one now. That's why it's. I know it intimately right now. So.
If I
I'm only saying because it's going to affect how the basement gets done if it has to be modified. So.
Yeah, if I may suggest wording on that, if the retaining wall has to be modified and it significantly alters the configuration of the plan so that the view from the street might be significantly altered, then it would come back to you. Because my guess is that the code is in place to minimize those walls, and it may in fact look less obtrusive if they do have to modify it. So may not have to come back.
That's fine.
If I just make a comment, just historically, a hillside lot, when the design review ordinance was originated, the great concern with hillside lots was what is the actual usable pad? You see a property that with 25,000 square feet. I say, wow, that's a huge lot. They could build a ride at Disneyland. But what is the actual usable pad? And while I don't say that this project pushes the envelope in that regard, we've seen projects that if there's a usable pad of 4,000 feet, the house is 3,999 square feet. But what it does, and my colleagues have brought this up, it does force you to be a little attentive to retaining walls, because if you want to utilize every square foot that you can on a hillside lot, it puts a little pressure on the applicant and on the city and this board to be attentive to those matters.
It's my turn? Yeah. Now, I agree with the hiring of hydrologist, civil engineer, landscape. I mean, I would hire all of those because I think the first thing that you need to address on a hillside like this, especially because of the settlement, is the issue of water. Because if a single small mistake is made, you might lose the whole hillside. I mean, it's a terrible thing to think about, but it does occur, and that's the biggest issue that you need to address to make sure that. And I noticed the same retaining wall that we were just talking about, the 7-foot one, the question. It seems like it's not parallel to the ones that go up the hill. Somehow it's all of a sudden it kind of turns and comes closer to the edge, which I think you might look at that, because if you want to be true to the sort of incremental retaining of the walls, probably it has to be parallel to the other ones. It will help you with the height issue also. And especially the driveway. It seems like if you really study that corner, you might find that it gains a lot of height at that corner. So these are things that you kind of need to check. And one thing that I noticed, and this cannot really become anything, I mean, it's a plan issue that I noticed. The kitchen occupies the side that faces the views. I think some of the best windows belongs to the bedroom down below. And when you look at the yard and the nice pool and the water is a big element, you don't have those nice big windows anymore. It seems like the kitchen then all of a sudden occupies with the tall counters where there's a great view possibility. So I just wanted to mention it. If you think about whether you want to put the kitchen on the view side of the house or maybe pull it back so that the dining can and the living can together create this very open space which can offer large windows looking out. I think that's what's missing from those elevations that you sort of need to think about. The other thing I like to suggest is that if you submit elevations that need to kind of be judged and understood by anyone, the public, ourselves, I would suggest that you color the whole elevation, not only the part that's been changed, because then it kind of it's harder for us to put it together somehow. But other than that, I think one other comment that has nothing to do with the sort of physical appearance of the house. I think the pool seems a bit straitjacketed in the confine of the yard, and because if you think about wanting to walk from one side of the yard to the other, you have to go around the pool and carefully kind of walk from one side to the other. Just wanted to, as a suggestion for you to kind of think about, but that's you can consider it or not. It's all up to you. Those are mine.
Thank you. Being a hillside project, I think the first thing needs to be done is to have a civil engineer on board, not after the design has been submitted. So I think the civil engineer coming on board, knowing the rules and regulations of the city and knowing what the height limitations are and those restrictions, I think it's going to impact the design substantially once the heights are set and designed properly. There are a lot of these elevations there that it's not really clear. The drawings are done extremely well, so it helps a little bit to understand what we're dealing with. But again, there are areas there that it's going to be questionable, and you're going to have, I personally believe that it's going to be a lot taller than 5-foot retaining walls, which I don't think it's allowed. But even if we set it at 5-foot retaining wall, it's going to be quite a bit different than what you have right now. And a lot of these landscaping that it's there now, it's going to get impacted. So you're going to have quite a bit of landscaping that is going to get removed for the foundation, for other types of excavation and other things. So I think the landscape architect is going to be important to be there. And some of the comments that Mr. Zarifi made, I think, is valid, even though we don't really want to get into the house, but a lot of times the function of the interior that affects the exterior of the building and how it looks, we tend to get into that a little bit, even though that it's completely out of our jurisdiction. It's more of a recommendation. Just a general comment. The more information that we get, the better understanding we have of the project, and much easier it is for us to make a accurate and precise recommendation. And having sections that are highlighted and not highlighted on the elevation, I agree. I think it needs to be all consistent and somehow, on the plans, by looking at the plans, we kind of put the two and two together. But overall, I think the design is done well. I think it's more of the site work is what we're having issue with. The retaining walls, the turn area, the previous or the driveway area, that the materials that it's been specified, and also some of these retaining walls that are being put for the basement. I believe that you may have issue with the building and safety. So I think by the time you're done with that and by the time you fix these, I think it will be a great project. Other than that, if there's anything else.
I just remembered one more thing. It seems to me that the skylight piece on top of the entry, in relation to the mass of the house, it can be just a little bit larger. It kind of looked like, especially in this elevation, it seemed like too small, kind of looked like a dormer more than, if it's bigger, it will give a lot more kind of presence to the entry.
I just want to, before we make a motion, I just wanted to communicate something to my fellow board members, everyone except for Mr. Malakian, which is that until you all were appointed to this board, we had a landscape architect on the board. And I just, as sort of a parting thought for you, to not underestimate the importance of proper landscaping in the hillsides. Because by the time projects are done, things tend to be completely gone, and not everything grows up there, and not everything should be planted. So a licensed landscape architect, knows what the plant palette should be for the hillsides and can help a lot with screening of retaining walls and that sort of thing. So I'm just making that suggestion as you go forward, that you keep that in the back of your mind as a requirement for a lot of these hillside homes, or flatland homes too, depending on the configuration. So I will make a motion to approve with condition, one condition being to hire a licensed landscape architect, and to confirm that landscape architect uses properly landscapes the hill, particularly using the appropriate materials as in the hillside design guidelines, being a native and drought-resistant plant palette, and also to review that grasscrete and help with that determination. Also, Mr. Garagos' suggestion, or the requirement that the staff verify the height of the retaining walls, and that if it changes the design of the project significantly, that it come back to the board. Were there any other?
Well, just make it that they have the civil drawing as part of this, and that the walls are verified, heights are verified.
Okay, so if there were no other parts, that's my motion.
I'll second it.
Did the staff
what do you want to
write down the comments, or?
I've got all the comments, I think.
Yeah, read the comments back, sorry.
Sure. I've got two conditions. We're not including the one that staff originally proposed, so I've just got two conditions. That the applicant retain a landscape architect to prepare a landscape plan for the site, and that the landscape plan should include landscaping for the hillsides in general, that the landscape architect should advise about the use of the grasscrete and other landscaping around the motor court, and use drought-tolerant landscaping for the hillsides. I've also got a second condition that the height of the retaining walls, all retaining walls should be verified, and if there's a significant change to the design of the house as a result of that analysis and comparison with code, that the revised project, if significant, should come back to the board.
And we should keep the grasscrete, but make it a recommendation that's only if it's deemed to be appropriate, given the soil and the topography and all of that. So we can just give.
Yeah, that's my understanding of.
And then also please add as just a recommendation, Mr. Zerfian's comment about the changing the swimming pool and the patio configuration. That way, if you do decide to do that, you don't have to come back to us. It just frees you up to be able to do it.
And do you want to make it a condition or a consideration about the skyline?
This kind of just a recommendation.
Okay, so that's another recommendation to increase the size of the skylight.
And as a minor note, drought-tolerant plants are not always compatible with the planting in the hillside design guidelines because of fire issues. So we'll have that language reflect the hillside design guidelines rather than the drought-tolerant landscape.
Yeah, I would actually like to use the word native in there, since that's what's in my mind appropriate for that transition between the private residence and the natural hill.
And the main issue on the permeability is really that it's going to loosen the soil and be a hillside issue. So it's almost something that the soils engineers are going to do.
So help me with the one recommendation. Is it essentially consider the size and location of the new pool? Does that get at it, or do you want more detail than that? Or
No, I think that's sufficient.
Okay. Increase the size of the skylight and use grasscrete only if feasible.
Right.
Those are the three recommendations.
Make the feasibility somehow relate to the integrity of the soil,
Right.
as opposed to just, feasibly economy-wise or something.
No, yes.
Okay. So is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so
I thought Mr. Garagos actually seconded.
Oh, you already did?
I'll share.
No, I didn't realize that, sorry.
We have a second and a third.
We have a motion by Friedman and a second by Mr. Garagos.
The fourth.
Any other comments?
No.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Friedman? Ms.
Yes.
Friedman? Mr. Garagos?
Yes.
Mr. Zarifian?
Yes.
Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
With that, I will leave and say goodbye to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all
We'll miss
very
you.
much. Thank you.
You'll be missed, right?
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Friedman.
All right, would you like to take a break, or are we okay, or?
Keep it coming.
Keep them coming. I think, yeah.
Are we ready?
It's been too easy the past couple of weeks.
That's been what?
It's been too easy the past
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for.
Okay, this will be, you guys can handle the next one? It'll be long.
Now we're no break.
No, we are live.
We're live. We're live.
Kind of dismantled some of my project here, so let me put this back together very quickly.
You want us to take a break? Are you gonna be okay?
No, sir, I'm in good shape. That will take. Actually, what I could do is, I just give this to you. Photographs, there's some attachments, and trail board with kind of a, you see some of my scribbling. Sorry about that.
problem.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. And the pointer, where did we have that one? John? Oh, here we are. Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the board, our next project is on this entire panel here. It's located at 292 Cumberland Road. It's case number 2-PDR 2008-036B, which means it's the second time that this board has reviewed it. It was last reviewed September 25th of last year, and it was returned for redesign. And of course, Ms. Friedman abstained because she lives within the neighborhood. Very briefly, the proposal is to demolish the existing house, which you can see in the photographs that Mr. Malikian has, which is one story, and replace it with a 3,812 square foot house. It'll be two-story, have a three-car garage that's attached. The existing house is has attached garage. If you look up here just real quickly again, the little dash lines are the existing house, and then the new house with the dark solid lines around it. There's no real change to the site planning. It's the same. The changes that came about are architectural and some mass and scale issues, which we'll go through. Now, as you noticed in your staff report, there are no real changes to the context of the site or the neighborhood comparison of the site. The site planning, there's no real changes there either. Anything minor will be mentioned in the conditions. no changes in that massive scale, other than what we'll be mentioning in the conditions. One point I would like to digress just before I jump into the conditions is the building design and detailing. It's on page 4 there, and I'll kind of go through that. Oh, you know something? Let me do this real quick. Let me back up for a second. I apologize. We have these new plans. They're on this side. This is the front, and we've tried to mirror everything so you can see front and front, west elevation, south elevation, south, etc. Have our 2 roof plans. So if you just go down here, everything here is older, everything here is new. And I meant to do that, and I apologize. So you got your first floor, second floor, some sections. Here's a little basement at the base, not the bottom there. But those are all the new plans. Okay, well, so back to that building design and detailing. If you noticed in the staff report, there was kind of an issue the staff was struggling with. And after the meeting, and we were going through and analyzing the project, because we met with the applicant in October and went through in great detail with him on some of these issues. The board and the applicant had agreed we want a Spanish colonial revival style. But some of the conditions that the board was asking the applicant to implement more closely associate themselves with a Mediterranean revival style. Now, we got this information from our design guidelines. Actually, Stephanie pointed it out to me, and I went and did some research. Design guidelines for residential buildings in our historic districts. And if you start looking at it, you can see that some of these issues, like the heavier, strong box-like forms, less wall articulation, simpler roof forms, are actually more associated with the modern Mediterranean style. And that's what the board was asking the applicant to do, because you felt that he had more articulation, more complex designs. And so the staff feels that he still has a lot of that. And you'll note in our recommendation it's a little bit split here, where we're saying if you're actually wanting this very simple design with the stronger forms, we don't feel the applicant may have gone that far. Or if you don't feel he's gone that far, then we don't want the project approved. But if you feel that the project is meeting your conditions.
I think so.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
I think that comment was made because there was a clarity in the plan that somehow was lost in the massing. It was kind of because of breaking the parts and pieces, many of them.
Yes.
It kind of lost that clarity, and our purpose was to bring that kind of simplicity to the three-dimensional volumetric expression.
Yes.
So it's less of a style issue, but more of an architectural directness in the way the volumes were laid out.
All right.
So it could be one or the other.
Well, it's one of the things that staff noted is that there is a good mixture that expressed.
Which I think is doing a good job.
Yes.
To finish
okay.
So it has gone in the right direction.
Okay. Well, we noticed that, and we also noticed when we look at our photographs, as you'll see, that there are Spanish colonial looking homes with articulation. And as you notice in the attachment that the applicant submitted, he said, hey, this is lots of articulations with this design. So he tried to address some of the issues the board brought up. In fact, I'd like to jump now into the conditions, because we have 12 of them, and by the time we get through those, we'll have pretty much addressed each of these issues. So there's 6 conditions that I was looking at that really deal with this stronger forms, continuing the rear elevation, which the board liked. They felt that this was a better design presentation, and they felt that it could be continued over here, and then of course around the building as well. And so I'll go through each of these 6 real quick. That they're actually number 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 11, and each of them talk about number 1, the Spanish colonial revival style is what you truly, or at least identifying as a name that you feel is appropriate. The second, what the applicant is saying, that's what he wants to do as well. That's the condition number 1. Number 2, the articulation you felt was very substantial, but we already discussed that. Number 3, carrying that rear facade around to the front. Number 4, the front porches. One of the things that staff was thinking of on the rear elevation, we were thinking that you can see how they have these stronger forms and continuing them up so that you have, instead of, this seemed to not fit the idea that you were referring to with the stronger forms here and then these lighter forms above, and it seems to be a mix of the architectural styles. Again, I don't think staff has so much of a problem with the idea of the mixture because we feel that they do kind of work, but if the board is interested in those stronger forms, then we're thinking that these should be continued up, and the same thing would apply here. You see these had these different types of columns. These have been strengthened here, and we thought, well, maybe we can just carry these on up, but that's just a thought that we pass on to you there. Then the number 7, if I'm not mistaken. Well, again, this one is just the project mass to be simplified. We were looking at some of the second floor. We felt that the second floor is where most of that simplicity. So if you look at this elevation here, you can see the roof line. Simplified this wall. It's not broken here. When you look in the floor plan, you can see it's a little bit broken. It's different. So this is a more simple view. So it's the second, also on the east side, the same idea. So you had some broken planes here. This is simplifying it right there. Number 11, the roof forms. The roof forms, there's a lot of similarities when you look in the roof forms, but it has been simplified here. You can just see by looking particularly at the east and west elevations. Now, those are just highlights of the 6 conditions that relate to the mass and scale and the stronger forms. If we go back now and look at the roof form in the front, there was one thing that the board, they weren't comfortable with this particular roof form design here, and so this has been added here. That is an element that can be seen more clearly. There's right there, you can see it there, as opposed to the older version, which was this long run from this pitch right here. It's broken here, and then this comes underneath. You can see how it comes under right there. Then if we look at now, probably the one issue that really is one that the staff felt that the applicant didn't go far enough on was this relationship of the garage and the front entry right here. As I'll just read this particular one. It said the front elevation design impinges on the entire entry and its roof element. The garage and entry elements do not go together. Recommend moving the entry, opening it with a wood header and scale it in relation to the garage. Consider a detached garage. Well, the applicant can certainly go into more of detail explaining how he did it, but for the most part, it is staff felt that this area here, the applicant said that he stretched this a little bit through here, and but quite frankly, staff just didn't really see it. So we didn't feel there was much being addressed in that area. And if you look at the elevations and, oh, nuts, I didn't put up the perspectives. I'll have those in the file. No, you haven't? Good. So if you look at the perspectives, and I'll put the other one up too, you'll see that the differences are very minor. If the board feels that he's gone far enough and everything else in this works, that's fine, but staff didn't feel he really addressed this issue. The east elevation, you recommended it to be more consistent with the rest of the house. One of the things that the applicant mentioned to me was he wanted to be able to show the board that on the east elevation, what it might look like if they didn't have those rafter tails. Not that he was going to leave out the rafter tails over there, but that he just wanted to show what that as an option, should the board like that. So he had no problem introducing those consistent with the rest of the house, and I think that was the issue that the board was looking at least as I understood.
So are we looking at this as a Spanish revival or a Mediterranean?
Well, the staff, as you notice in our comments, was if the board feels that that the applicant hasn't gone far enough on those stronger, simpler forms, then that's your call. To ask the applicant to come back with some additional information. However, staff feels that going through this neighborhood, an articulated building with this look is not inconsistent with the neighborhood, because we feel there's other homes with a Spanish colonial look to them, and we feel, based on our historic guidelines, a Spanish colonial revival home has lots of articulation, has more complex roof forms. And we have real experts here who can talk about it. If you want to ask Stephanie, we brought some handouts and everything. Okay? Then the...
Yeah, if I could just clarify the point. It seems like it's a minor point, but it maybe leads to some confusion in our work with applicants. What we've started to do is when we're working with an applicant on a traditional revival style, because we understand that the board has asked there be a level of consistency and authenticity to a style, that a style is not a mix of styles. We've tried to find a collection of examples that we can use to help applicants understand, and we found that even though we now have a few historic districts in town, not all of our projects are in historic districts, we still use these design guidelines for residential buildings in adopted historic districts because it has a lot of examples in it that we think are helpful to the applicant in designing a traditional revival style. And so I think that we've at some point provided you with color copies of this. If you'd like us to do that, we'll be happy to. Otherwise, it's available for everyone online, and we could send you the link to that as well. And we've copied for you tonight the two styles that we're talking about in this report, the Spanish revival style and the Mediterranean revival style, because those terms are commonly confused and commonly mixed up. So we thought that if we simply clarified it now, it would be easier for our applicants to understand your intent if we simply clarified that quickly.
Okay. Thank you.
Now I have three last conditions, Finland, and we'll try to wind it up, and I'll answer any questions that you have or try to do my very best. So one of the conditions is to recommend 3 garage doors. If you recall, the previous one was 2 garage doors, and the applicant submitted this one here, so we have a revised garage doors. The windows. Now, the staff disagreed with the applicant's interpretation of the board's comment for windows. I'll just read that one as well. The board noted that the window motif is acceptable. However, they recommend using divided light windows for the Spanish revival style. The applicant felt that these divisions between the window glasses was appropriate as being divided light. Staff felt it was more of the individual glass having the, I believe, mullions. That was probably the correct term, dividing the light up, so the individual glass. So we disagree with the applicant on that, but he can go into his explanations there. And then finally, we have the landscape plan. Staff had asked for a landscape plan because currently, if you look at this house footprint, this volume out here is pretty much all concrete or stamped paving. And so now the applicant will be introducing a garage out there in that area, which is fine. It reduces the volume of the paving. And they're also going to add this planter area here. The staff just wants to make sure that this planter is in the ground and not just a raised planter on top of the concrete, that we want to have true planting there with true trees. And also right here, though we didn't, and the board didn't express any real concern, we just want to make sure that the landscaping here is appropriate between this new two-story addition and the neighbor, which is located right here, because this is his backyard. And we didn't feel that overall the height was going to be an issue with the windows overlooking into the backyard, because as you look on that west elevation, you're looking at these types of windows, when you look at them, are not really your view windows, or like bathrooms and things of that nature. In fact, that's what they are. So it's not, we don't feel there's a privacy issue, but we wanted just to really double-check pretty much the landscaping in this area. The applicant didn't submit a plan. He just said, listen, I'm just going to put in these podocarpus trees, the little spindly pine trees here and over here. And he didn't go into any more detail. And we don't want to touch the backyard, and staff doesn't feel that needs to be done. If you've ever walked out in that backyard, you'll see it's very well landscaped and well manicured. It's very, very well done. And as well as the front yard, but we just want to make sure that that this is going to be appropriate and defensible should that issue come up. So that's why we made that request. So that pretty much concludes my comments. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to pursue them and whatever I can do.
Thank you.
All right.
Edward Hagopian.
Again, good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. Since last time, we have spent a lot of time with the staff and in our office going through your comments, trying to incorporate all these comments into our plans. And honestly, we have spent a lot of energy and time to come up with the plans that will be approved this time, and I am hoping that you will approve. If there is any kind of question or confusion, I'm ready to listen to that and to incorporate into our plans. I think I would like to thank Chris Baxter with the time he spent before with us, and now his introduction of this project is so complete that there's not much for me to say. I don't want to go in detail one by one that all these recommendations that you have, comments or recommendations we have incorporated. If I'm not wrong, the garage issue was a recommendation, not not something that we had to do. This entry, if I move it to the right or to any other location, that will destroy the whole project and the function of it. It cannot be done. I understand if this was a little bit wider lot or different configuration, it could have been better if the garage was a little bit separated, but that's what the fact is now. The function of the plan is in a way that we cannot enter through a room to this house. We have to enter to the center of the house and distribute from there. Also, our approach to the entry of the house is in a kind of angle, so the first thing you see is not the facade of the garage, is in kind of perspective between house and the garage. Other than that, the landscape issue, as Chris explained, the backyard is real nice landscape, and in the front, the issue for us was to have a kind of buffer between the garage, house, and the street. And by adding these podocarpus trees, I'm not a landscape architect, but we consulted with the landscape architect, and he recommended these trees to us. The ones that we have now on the west side of the house, it completely separates these two properties from each other. It's so dense and grows so fast, so nice that. Other than that, we were talking to our neighbors, and apparently they have some comments about adding 1 or 2 or 3 trees in this front. We have no problem with that. Another issue that I was talking to the owner, trying to convince him to use barrel ties, which was recommended by the staff, by the board. That is also, apparently he is convinced now that if that is what you want, we'll do it. Instead of having S-style. Anyway, it's a clay tile, you know that. Beside those examples of the Spanish style that we were submitting to Chris and Stephanie, I have bought a lot of Spanish books now, and my library is rich. And there are all kinds of it, and I really enjoy to design Spanish houses. This is all I can say. We have done our share, and it's your turn now.
Okay, we have a question.
Can you explain what you're thinking of doing with the second floor porches, the supports, the post, and the beam? It looks like a very interesting the way that you've drawn it. I just want to be clear about what you had in mind.
It's really hard for me to decide which way to go.
I mean, I like the fact that it's a wood piece, and it gives the impression that it's a turn column and there's some kind of bracket in the wood beam and stuff. I think that'd be really great, and I'm wondering if that's what you were thinking of.
Yes.
Is it a wood column? That's what you were
Yes,
thinking?
exactly. Yeah.
Because I think it'd be very strong.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I have a card from Barbara Grossman.
My name is Barbara Grossman, and my husband and I are neighbors on the east side at 286 Cumberland, side of the sycamore and the oak mentioned in the environmental constraints section. We are pleased that the trees are of concern in the plan. Since our two houses are quite close together, we continue to hope that if any changes are made, the design would not be pushed further back on the lot, as this would infringe on the privacy of both residences. We are pleased that our neighbor has taken this into consideration in his design. We note that a number of changes have been made and appreciate and agree with the comments and conditions section presented by the city staff. We hope these will be adopted. Some of our concerns would be to ensure that if the style is the intended Spanish Revival type style, that it has the needed character details to positively impact the neighborhood. Several of the ideas are taken from Mr. Jacobian's pictures of the classic 1920s era buildings included in his proposal. These include divided light windows, as seen in similar houses in the neighborhood, a barrel tile roof, using angle-stacked tiles on the balconies, as seen in the picture, as opposed to iron railings on the balconies, and a textured stucco. Concern about the scale of the entry, the door, and the added wood piece remain. With the house having a large presence in the neighborhood, its appearance is important to this historical area. Landscaping beyond a line of podocarpus trees to fit the city-stated woodland neighborhood of the Rockmont Park region is a necessity and will further enable the design to enhance the neighborhood. We want our neighbor to have his home, and we hope an increase of the Spanish Revival architectural elements will more positively impact the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the comment for the railings?
Oh, I was looking at the picture, and there are some angle-stacked tiles on the balconies, and sometimes when you look at these homes, they don't have the wrought iron railings or the iron railings on the balcony front. They have this stacked tile design, and I walk a lot.
Roof tile pieces. You mean roof tile pieces?
Yeah, I think they're roof tiles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See, when you're
terrace
looking, you
tiles.
see the cross-section of the little
Yes,
roof tiles. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You see that a lot in the homes, and I noticed that because that's, I understand, a
Yeah.
classic example that Mr. Cobian picked. Has many classic elements of this, if this is to be a Spanish revival-style design. Just an idea. I mean, I'm not an architect, but I walk a lot in the neighborhood, and I know we have wrought iron on railings and so forth, but on the balconies. And I believe Mr. Philip Keller from the Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association is quite a student of this style, and he has some ideas. And he couldn't be here tonight, or he was hoping, but I don't think he's getting here. He's planning to email in some of those ideas that he has, because he really has studied this style.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vahe Ohanian.
My name is Vahe Ohanian. I'm here to support the plan.
Can you state your address also?
It's 213 North Orange, Suite G.
Okay.
And I also have a separate business here in Glendale. I particularly like the second plan, the new plan. And it's because the lines are simpler, there's less contrast, It looks more of a Mediterranean, and I really appreciate that style of the second plan. The older plan is kind of, I don't know, it's not clean enough, but I like the second plan.
Thank you. Artek Davutian.
My name is Artek Davlatian. Address is 213 North Orange as well, Unit G. Also have several properties and do business in Glendale as well. I'm very familiar with the project. I've worked with the owner to develop the style and to make a decision on which style he wanted. And as well as with Mr. Baxter in the past for the front yard and whatnot, I understand his concerns. And I think he's the architect and the owner have addressed those issues, and I'm in support of the project.
Okay. Armin Davlatian.
Hi, my name is Armin Davlatian. I live in the Cumberland Heights District, 1529 Cleveland Road. I've seen the house, I've talked to David, and I'm in full support of this project. I think this is the type of buildings we need. And I talked to a lot of my neighbors who have decided not to build in Glendale. We're losing a lot of gentlemen like David who are going to La Cañada to build because there's no design review board and there's no nitpicking, or to Burbank. And I just don't want to see good families leaving Glendale because design review board is being too picky, whether it be S-tile or this and that. I think style looks good, looks decent in this economy. We should let him build. He's going to spend over $750,000 plus, I think, in my estimation, to build this. I'm sure it might even go overboard. I mean, it might even cost even more, but it's good for us. We get bigger, better tax base, property tax base. It's good for our school districts because there's taxes being paid, and it's great for the economy and the local economy. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything to say? Or, okay. Close the public session. Who would like to go first?
I'll go. Overall, I'm glad you made the changes. I think it's made a much more consistent building. You did a nice job on the back side, and I'm glad you brought it around the front. The changes on that porch side that's beside the front door, I think is nicer that it is strong. I sort of disagree with staff. I like the fact that the second floor is lighter. I think it sometimes can be too much if you bring that lower floor up. And I think it also helps to kind of break it up visually. All I would say was, and I'm probably making a condition, is to understand what those columns are. And my preference would be for it to be a wood, even a turned column, to give it a lightness and something interesting, as opposed to just stucco everywhere. So that would be something I would like to talk about with the board. The 5 on condition number 5, I think my intent was, since we were doing something that was fairly historic, I don't think the single light is consistent. So I would want that to be a true, not a true divided light, but have divided light, not single light windows. I think it undermines the strength of the design. I think it's a really, really great, and I think it would be a very positive addition. Whether it happens on the back, I would be open to that. But I think definitely on the front and the sides it would be very important. I'm glad we're doing the barrel tile. Comments of the community. We're here to make nice buildings, so we have a big tax base. I'm the owner. So we want nice buildings because we want to make sure it's a nice city to live in. I had those same comments about design review way back when. So. Overall, I think it's very good. I'm very happy with the changes you've made. It's always difficult on side elevations that you have these large, but the trade-off is, do you want to have the privacy problems with the large areas? Probably not going to be exactly where you want them on the sides. But it's not being too much of an impact on the neighbor. Weighed with that. The only thing I will say, though, about the garage, I do sort of have a problem with the fact that it isn't what you could do if you still want to maintain a covered or an enclosed connection. You've got the closet that's on the upper side of the hallway. I really think, you have a lot of space below that little guest bath before you get to the end of the dining room wall. You have space there that would never be seen by anyone else. It's not going to be seen by the street. I really hope that you would take that whole element and just move it down. And you could move that down probably 3 or 4 more feet, such that you don't have the wall right in plane with the garage coming right to the house. So if you just took that whole element and either moved it straight down or you reorganized those elements so you had a breezeway, the bathroom, and a closet. But I think that's actually very important because on a building of that size, most of the homes in neighborhoods, you wouldn't see the garage. The garage would be somewhere else. You'd have a large lot and you'd go around the backside and the garage would sort of disappear. And I think if we can make that happen, important. So even shoving it back 4 feet, if we can't get it detached, I do think is important. So that's about it for me.
Okay. If I can go next, I'll be very simple. Just to reiterate, we do have design review board in our title, so it's a little hard to. We're not just the house department. So we do, and my colleagues here, and believe me, I come from a homeowner's perspective. They come from architectural background. They put in considerable work and thought into every project. But fortunately or unfortunately, there is a design element to our comments. And thank you to Stephanie for re-bringing to our attention the conflict between Mediterranean revival style and Spanish colonial revival style. That, when we see a project that wants to mirror one of these designs, we kind of have to make a choice. What is that design that they're actually mirroring? So, but their comments are that if this is a meld of the two and it's consistent and there is an articulation, which you certainly have identified, Mr. Hagobian, to the board here and made great efforts to do that. So I'm in support of the drift, if you will, that these two styles, although they're not totally dominant in either case, can be married to the neighborhood's satisfaction. The one thing I will speak in support of my colleagues' comments about the windows, because windows are a big part of whichever design you picked of the two. So we need to talk about the window presentation.
Any comments on this 6 other conditions that the staff has made? Have you gone through that? I know that both of you guys agree on number 6, which is the window section details.
The other ones I think I agree with. I mean, it's the landscape plan I think is necessary to do in that area. The mass, I don't think the mass needs to be readdressed. But the issue about the garage is what I'd mentioned, and the barrel tile is gone, they've agreed to it. So, for me.
Mr. Chair, look, it sounds like at least one of the board members is not interested in keeping number 4. Am I correct, Mr. Gergos?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
we'd
would
want
like
to,
to move forward.
there's a possibility that might be eliminated, and then number 2, is there something else that you see that should be simplified or changed in some way? Or my comments really, other than I don't really have anything in my comments. I only have my comments so far relate to the number 1, condition number 1, and number 3, 5 and 6. Actually, number 5 also relates to windows.
Yeah, I mean, just
number 7.
The nature of the privacy and the fact that you're not going to have windows, you almost don't want to have less articulation on the side. I think before what we were commenting on is there wasn't a rhyme or reason for what the volume was doing. It was not an idea. You had such great areas, but the side it seemed to not be as strong, and I think that's been addressed.
And my feeling about the mass, yes, it's a large house, but the obvious way of dealing with the mass would be to push it towards the back of the lot, and that's a privacy issue for neighbors on both sides. So I think the massing is acceptable.
First, I'd like to thank Mr. Hakopian for doing such a nice job. I mean, you just didn't go back and make some changes. You really rethought a lot of things, and it shows, and I think the building has improved greatly. Again, with regard to the comment for the Design Review Board, I think at some point before the Design Review Board was instituted, a lot of people wanted to leave Glendale because there were a lot of bad buildings going up. So that could be another another reason for having one. But we're not trying to make life harder for anyone. We just like to make sure that we do our job in raising issues that maybe 5 more set of eyes will have a chance to comment on things and make things better, not only for the neighbors, but also for the applicant himself. But other than that, I'll just make my comments quickly. And I think this is not in any particular order. Maybe I'll just talk about this, and then I think I agree with the second floor columns to be different. It looks much nicer. They should have a lighter character and a character of their own. With regard to the entry, I think I looked at it. That's the part that I looked at it the most as we were talking, and I think I have an idea that I like to share and see what the rest of the board might think of. I think the biggest, probably, let me go back to the plan first.
It's on the top.
The plan, the idea of the plan is that the house is made out of 2 blocks. And, or maybe you can see it better here. There are 2 simple blocks, and you enter right in between, and you can go right through, and it's done really nicely and clearly. I think the part that sort of doesn't jive with that idea is the introduction of another portal kind of large frame that comes out of those 2 blocks, and then happens to be right next to the garage, where it wants to be a large opening that's ceremonial, but then it butts into the garage. I'm wondering if you need to have that kind of a big sort of column-like structure right at the entry, where you can leave the roof that protects the entry, but then let the building pieces, the 2 blocks, come down to the ground and suggest that that's where you go to enter, rather than adding another piece to say that this is the entry. Am I kind of being clear? I mean, maybe not having that kind of a ceremonial thing that is in contrast to the garage becomes part of the problem, I think.
So that we understand, we've heard 2 possible solutions to what we've heard is a conflict with the garage.
I agreed with what Mr. Gergo said.
So
In addition to that, you could think of not having those 2 sort of.
So that what you're suggesting is that the covering over the entry is simply a cantilever piece that doesn't come down to the ground.
Yeah.
Is that what you're suggesting? Great.
I think that's a suggestion that can be considered. Because I spent a lot of time thinking about this, because I think there's a conflict of a corner being celebrated in a way that really wants to be a very frontal piece. So that kind of keeps being head-to-head with, I'll let you, maybe I should go through my comments. Yeah. Then I think in conjunction to that kind of language of cantilevered roof, I think I like the way you had treated this corner better before than the way it is now. I think this having that corner column works much better, because now there's this opening and another opening just a little bit larger, they seem like they're pretty close but not different enough. So if you treat this piece like that cantilevered roof, it kind of starts to become a language that you can use around the building, which I think it appears at the balconies. And so then you have a certain way of treating those kind of cantilevered roofs. So I think it probably will put the piece, all those pieces together. Then the roof tiles, I think I forgot the name of
The barrel?
the barrel ones. The barrel ones, obviously, I think they look much better. The S type just loses its whole character. I would support having the barrel tile. And the window mullions, I tend to like not having too many mullions, but I'm sort of ambivalent for having or not having them. But I can go either way. But my recommendation is that if it's added, it won't take anything away from the interior of the house looking up. So just going back to this, I think once this indentation is there, this corner of that larger volume will read, and then you might even have a chance of adding a little window which will bring some light into this connection. So I think that was a good comment.
I guess, Mr. Gobi, you need I'll open it up.
Before I forget that window.
State your name again, please.
Edward Hagobian, 220 South Kenwood Street, Suite 210, Glendale 91205. I'm glad that you like the changes that we have made. This window that you suggested, it's a closet behind that.
No, I mean, if the closet is moved, then
If you reorient that area, look at
we
that
will
space.
increase the square footage and elongate the corridor from garage to the inside of the...
No, just take the same amount of space you have and just slide it down.
Okay, come closer and
Yeah.
show it here, please.
Show me that, how we do that. Yeah, this is the sort I'm saying just take this same space, the idea of the bathroom and the closet, this, and just take that whole element down. But you would reorganize it. You'd do bathroom and closet probably with the hallway. I think you have enough space within here. This articulation isn't important. You're not going to see it anywhere. This is all vegetated. So you could do bathroom, closet, and hallway, and this could then jog back. So, there's plenty of room here to do that. There's plenty of space to do closet and bathroom with hallway.
You want me to eliminate this closet from this side?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do even more. I mean, get it down even into here so that there's really space for it.
But then I'm afraid if I cantilever this roof here, and I put a brace underneath, or how that
put a
will
brace.
interfere with this roof here.
Were the comments an either or, two types of recommendations?
How this detail will work out?
What do you think about a flat roof that's over the entry rather than the pitch? Does the pitch having something to do with it? What if it was a flat roofed element that could be a little lower, possibly?
That would probably help.
If it was a flat roof and you had it, you could have the height because the wall would be high, but then the opening could be a little lower. You might have.
This too close to this roof. Mix this
No,
two
the height,
together.
you can leave the roof, but I think you're saying eliminating that pitched roof on top of it.
Yeah,
right?
take the pitch roof off.
And then
Make it a flat roof element.
What's the difference? I mean,
No, but it would give you a chance to lower the opening. If the opening was an issue, the size of the opening.
You mean to keep this elevation here, the roof height here, right?
Right. Yeah. Just throwing out an option. What I'm saying is if this was a flat roof element, you could see a large band here happening, which would allow you to lower the opening, but it would have a mass, enough strength to it. This doesn't have to be this thin. So this could be thicker, this element through here. Possibly, I don't know if that addresses it or not.
It's just maybe in plan, when you have this kind of a sort of a ceremonial entry,
Yeah,
and
there
then
needs to be
it runs,
space. There needs to be space.
partially it runs into the garage, and then it's kind of daylight and comes up. It's not a sort of in the classical sort of language of Spanish architecture, and Stephanie can correct me. This is not a common sort of condition that you'll have this kind of a large element and partially connected and partially not. I think that kind of, that's why in the elevation, and in a flat two-dimensional elevation, it looks nice.
One option you have here is basically removing this and creating a much thicker wall in here, maybe even a 2.5, 3 feet. What will happen is it'll come out to here, and then it will actually, either you'll have a condition like something like this, which will be much deeper. We will have a much deeper condition that it's going stepping in, or we would have something like that, which would be just an independent set of columns there. But
I personally prefer to have a depth in front of the entrance.
I think that would be
sun and rain to be
prevented.
prevented.
I think definitely,
not only from the
definitely,
top, but
exactly.
also from the side.
Exactly.
When
So-
I have this form here, it goes all the way up, and it prevents that moisture and rain to hit from sides. So that has been always the reason for me to have an entry that is protected.
I don't think, for me, there's not a problem with the entry piece. I just don't like that it's attached. And I think by lowering that element, you'll see three sides of it. It'll read better as an entry piece. For me. I think the entry's fine as you did it, as long as the connection moves.
Let's finish up.
Can I just ask a question? You may be following this, but I have to admit, I'm lost. On the roof, does that mean that when you, from a simplistic point, we're asked basically just pulling this wall so this is an open space here now?
Right.
Okay. Now, when we do that, we have a roof that continues over. Are we doing anything with
No,
the
we're
roof?
taking the roof back.
No.
Take the roof back.
Take the roof back. So this roof then comes back. So
Right.
basically, is this going to be open to sky?
Yeah, the whole idea is so that then it'll read as an entry piece.
Okay.
Because it has clearance.
So it's separated, so we push this wall back.
Yeah.
This wall can proportionately go back.
Yeah.
He just reorganizes this, they can still be connected, have all that, and the first story garage roof pulls back too.
Exactly.
So that then it just wraps like
Yeah,
that.
then the whole entry will read
Gotcha.
as an entry piece. So.
Right. Now, in your condition, I have to admit, I'm completely off.
You're on your own on that one.
Maybe Stephanie understands.
My condition is simple. If you take this and that piece out and let the building volumes read, this is coming down,
Mhm.
and then this piece is coming down. It's a little bit confusing here because the front part comes further out.
I think we have a clear understanding of the variety of options, and that I think will be very helpful as we work together with the applicant.
Okay.
Thank you.
So diplomatic.
Thank you.
If we can work together to solve these issues, make it easy for you.
Yeah.
I agree with the
Yeah.
comments. I think it's really helpful for the architect to work with the staff and coming up. I have a couple of minor considerations, nothing major, nothing extravagant, but just a couple of minor. I would ask you to consider removing the shutters and creating much deeper and thicker wall and creating those front windows. You also have a good opportunity, and it's part of this idea came with one of your sketches that you submitted. You have these opportunities here that what you can do is you can actually make these walls a lot thicker and the windows in, and then these become part of the exterior wall. So then they become the actual recessed part of the wall. So those columns are not just simple, and they have a substantial depth to it. Considering that, also I would ask you to consider. I'm not sure what this wood header is all about. I would consider if you can remove that. That would be great. the entry wood header. I'm not sure what this is all about. So, but other than that, I'm not gonna get into it, so.
Yeah, one more thing I didn't see in my notes. The railings, I think, has this little pieces connected to it that I'm not sure if it kind of, in the neighborhood, you'll find that kind of a language of simplicity and in making railings kind of be less stylized and more, how should I say it? I think if it's less, it's more in some of the examples that we see. Simpler, I would think will work much better with it. Because some of them are wider, smaller, and those things keep kind of floating, and you don't know how to organize it in a way. But that's about it.
I think there has not been a clear direction whether it's a consideration or condition to have divided light exterior muntins.
Well, I think what I'm going to ask my colleagues to go down the list of the conditions, and from my understanding, condition number 2 and number 4, we're going to strike that out. We're going to leave 1, 3, 5, 6, and 7.
Mr. Chair, will we modify the last sentence in number 1? We're not talking about a detached garage.
No.
So we scratch
Well, you
that
can
part.
yeah, you can
Yes, sir.
take that out.
Okay.
But we are going to have them move that element, though, right? Or not?
Yes.
Yes, sir. I have a statement in here, it may be butchered, but you can help me with language on it. And I think Stephanie understands a lot better than I do about the details.
And then and we can have this as a separate condition or work it into one of the ones that we have. Simplify the railings and remove the wooden lintel. We also want to specify that the posts or columns holding up the roof on the second floor balconies are wood and recommend a turned wood column. We also are wondering about the comment on the thickness of the walls, because is that a consideration? And if that is a consideration, would you like it to be only in the front of the house? Is that important? Because that does add it may add considerable expense.
It's a consideration.
A
They
consideration.
can consider it anywhere they want to do it.
Okay.
I mean, that would be a consideration.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion if we can read back what we're including.
Okay.
Just so we're
I can
clear.
go through the easy ones.
Yeah, okay.
All right. On the conditions.
Clear, I wasn't.
No, not everybody's clear.
If you're going to make the motion, you better read it.
Yes, I'm not, all right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, condition number 1 will remain as, with the exception of the last sentence, which will be removed. Condition number 2 will be removed. Condition number 3 will be kept. Condition number 4 will be removed. Condition 5, 6, and 7 will be kept. Yes.
Clarification, in that Spanish style, when you put the mutton in, it creates a panel that's horizontal. So you're not trying to create vertical panels of glass. So in a door, there may only be 3 panels or 4 panels.
Okay.
Panes, so.
Okay, so those, what we're calling the divided lights,
Yeah,
that's
the
what you're
muttons.
referring to as panels.
Yeah,
Okay.
or divided by muttons. Yeah.
Muttons. Okay, and I'll just put horizontal, and I'll work on that language there.
I would only make it a requirement myself that it's on the front and sides, and then the rear would be just a recommendation, if you guys want to go for that.
How does the board feel about the rear?
I think you should be consistent.
Consistent, okay, so I'll put, all right. So, is that all right with the rest of the board? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so now, the other ones, I have simplify the railings, be less stylized.
I have removed the entry wood header. This is where it starts getting a little dicey here. I have second floor balcony columns to be wood as represented in the plans. There's something more detailed that I can work with Stephanie on the language about that. I have revised the closet, bathroom, and hallway on the first floor next to the garage and move it 3 to 4 feet to the east, which is down, so that the entry elements and garage do not conflict. Consider adding a window in what is currently the area where the closet is, but that would be, reformatted floor plan. Then I have this roof element. I have to admit, I'm not sure. I'd ask if Stephanie could help me on that roof element.
In the condition, I think that those options refer to condition number 1, and we have copious notes on it. We have the tape. We may just leave the condition as written, and we have all your thoughts and ideas, and I think that's helpful to the applicant.
Okay. Then there was Mr. Zarifians, you had something about the west balcony columns that if you could, yes, sir, if I may just point out.
If you could just help me understand the first.
The way this is the difference between the way this is drawn and that.
Yeah, that actually, other than the fact that they're different sizes, which I agree is unfortunate, if you look at the front elevation, I think it's much stronger that it's a plaster element, if you look at it now, than when it was wood. It was way too light for, that's actually one of the things I really liked about the front now. On the upper right corner, see that? I think it's much stronger if it's my motion, I wouldn't want to include the old one, because I think the new one's much better, so. You're welcome to do another motion. No. I don't think it's as strong.
Do you like that square opening? You don't like?
Well, actually, I was going to comment. I don't know how. I do think that profile should match the other. On the far right of the front elevation. Yes. That doesn't have the same lintel detail that the other ones do. If you notice.
Okay. Are you referring to this element here and these right here?
Go around to the front.
Oh, yeah, here. Oh, got it.
Yeah, that
right
doesn't
there.
have the same
That doesn't have that same. You want to add that element. We said, well, that's fair. So that's what I'm going to, okay. Let me just make that real quick.
But that's a consideration, right? Or
the lintel, I would think that would be, actually, you want to use that for consistency.
Oh, no, I mean, not the lintel, but the whole condition. The column corner versus...
For me, it's a condition. I think it's much better the way you did it now than the way it was.
Okay.
I think it's much stronger. It's unfortunate on the side, but I think on the front it's much stronger myself.
Yeah, I mean, I can live with that.
Do we add this as a condition or just leave off? No, it's a condition. I like the way it is now. Okay, so that column leave as is, with the exception of adding the lintel on the north elevation. Right. Okay, so I have that is consideration is for the thicker walls to create depth for windows. I have as consider. If they were going to do a 2x6 wall, you could do at least the bullnose.
I'm talking about windows.
Just the front ones?
Like these, that the depth of these be substantial enough that these walls become part of it.
Are you referring to the walls between the windows or around the windows?
I think between them.
But I think it would be fair to say where it should happen or where it shouldn't happen, because I think the same location, the center, then becomes heavier.
I'm trying to find an example so I can show you.
All I'm talking about is just bullnosing the plaster into the window. That is the extent I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah, but see, this is the bigger volume.
Right. So what I'm saying is, let's say, like here or here, I don't know if there's any windows there, but.
No, there's no windows up in that area. from what I see.
In those areas, I think, proportion, I think.
He's already showing a plaster inset on the windows, so.
Consideration.
He's already showing it on the.
All right, so I have as consider the thicker walls, and I'll use this example that you provided right here from our guidelines. I see what you're referring to.
He's already showing it this.
Yeah.
You mean on this one?
No, let me, I gave my, those guidelines. All right, so is that it?
And, yes, yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, that's all I have.
Well, there's a motion. I will second Mike's
Very good.
comprehensive motion. Comprehensive, courtesy of staff. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Roll call, please.
Yes, Chair, members of the board. I forgot my agenda here, so you'll excuse me, please. Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Garagos?
Yes.
Mr. Zarifians?
Yes.
And Mr. Malikian?
Yes.
That would be 4-0. Approved with these conditions.
I think we went through the rest of the agenda before we started with the cases, so I think we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.